Once a year, as hell and heaven open their gates, devils and angels join in playing the human game.
Alfred, you are celebrated throughout the world as one of the finest living pianists. You've also written on music, and here Phaidon have suddenly produced a volume of your poems, over 200. Where did it all start?
I was not out to write poetry. I did not expect it, but they were suddenly there. And after a while, I looked at them, and they seemed to have their own voice. And then, about 20 years ago, the poems started to write themselves. I'm listening, and when the poems come, I hear them.
Angels and devils play a big part in this book. Can you talk about this preoccupation? Why so many angels and why so many devils?
Well, already in very young years, I was attracted by mythological creatures, masks and prodigies and such. Maybe this is my metaphysical or mock metaphysical side.
One of my favourite poems, called The Clappers of Cologne, deals with those members of the audience who applaud immediately a sublime coda. This poem was presumably based on your experience in the concert hall.
Cologne has a very good concert hall, but it has the drawback that you can hear the audience very clearly, not only the music. So this appeared in the booklet of the Cologne Philharmonie.
This poem did?
Yes. And it helped, I think. The one thing I can say is that very few of the poems are autobiographical. Yeah. And one should not fool oneself to think that they are about me. What interests me in my poems is how far they get away from me.
Yeah.
I think the influence on my poems, if there was one, comes more from the theater, from film, from cartoons, yeah. from the visual world. And my poems like to transgress borders. I do not believe in the orthodox way of being lyrical.
I think a great attraction of this volume is the wealth of reproductions of art, I think most of which, or all of which, are in your possession. Which came first, the painting or the drawing, or the poem? I'm thinking, for example, Elisabeth Haase's Leo, or Ludwig Moschetz's Three Sonnets. I mean, did you write the poem first and then append?
Well, Elisabeth Haase did it afterwards. Right. Moschetz did it before. It depends.
If you compare the English side of this book to the German, there's obviously a discrepancy. One is longer sometimes. These are not really, in the literal sense, translations, are they?
Not always, no. I call them versions because I take liberties that a translator with translation ethics would not dare to take. That's why I usually do the first translation.
Yes, yeah. And why do you dispense with punctuation?
I don't want the reader to be limited. I think that the reader should be attentive reading these texts and get his own picture of it. That's also why I avoid titles.
Yeah.
There's hardly a poem that has a title. Most things are ambiguous. Ambiguity is a very important matter anyway.
What would you like your readers to take away from this volume?
This was a difficult question. I made a note and said, a sense of ambiguity, the pleasure of being disquieted, and the enjoyment of lucidity plus weirdness.
And finally, Difficult question. Do you have a favourite poem?
It is dedicated to Jean-Paul. Merely expanding won't do. Let us taper ourselves as well, be rarefied, even evaporate without a trace. By all means consolidate, but don't fail simultaneously to dissolve, liquefy a minute drizzle. The most sophisticated way of speaking softly is silence.